Hello, my name is Natalie Temple, and I'm giving a presentation on violence in the media. Violence in the media. Violence in the media is everywhere. It's on the nightly news, it's on our social media, it's on our TV shows, movies, and video games. We are constantly seeing violence. But what has it done to us, if anything at all? There are countless accounts of violence in TV shows like Maury, movies like Kill Bill, games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. The Kingsman Secret Service, there's a whole scene just of violence. Absolute violence. In Kingsman Golden Circle, you see someone getting ground up into meat. Violent Night is an incredibly gory Christmas film. Articles written about this movie that came out a couple years back, the majority of them were like, why is there so much violence in this movie? It's not needed. Why was this movie even made, Rambo, just tons and tons of violence in movies. Media violence and our behavior. According to an article written by the American Psychological Association, a study done in 1982 found that children who watched copious amounts of violent shows and movies developed a higher level of aggressive behavior as teenagers. The study continued to observe these people into adulthood and found that children who watched a lot of TV violence when they were young were more likely to be arrested and prosecuted for criminal acts as adults, compared to those who did not. Researchers also found that constant exposure to violence on TV desensitizes people to real-world violence and has made people less empathetic, and in some became enjoyable and did not result in the anxious arousal that we expect to see from such imagery. The amount of times that I will go onto Twitter and see videos of people fighting, we now instinctively pull out our phones and film a fight. There have been short-term effects and long-term effects that are associated with violence in the media. According to an article on the National Library of Medicine, there are 3 short-term effects. The first effect is priming, which is when an external observed stimulus excites another brain node representing a cognition, emotion, or behavior. E.g., the sight of a gun is inherently linked to the concept of aggression. The primed concepts that make behaviors linked to them more likely. Second effect is arousal. The extent that mass media presentations arouse the observer, aggressive behavior may also become more likely in the short run for 2 possible reasons. Excitation transfer and general arousal. First and subsequently stimulus that arouses an emotion, e.g. a provocation, arousing anger. So like you see a person slap someone across the face. For no reason, that excites anger in you. This may be perceived as more severe than it is because some of the emotional response stimulated by the media presentation is misattributed as due to the provocation transfer. For example, an exciting media presentation, gets other people excited. Alternatively, the increased general arousal stimulated by the media presentation may simply reach such a peak that inhibition of inappropriate responses is diminished, and dominant learning responsibilities are displayed in social problem solving, e.g. direct instrumental aggression. The third short-term effect is mimicking. Mimicking is the imitation of specific behaviors, and that can be viewed as a special case of the more general long-term process of observational learning. In recent years, evidence has accumulated that human and primate young have an innate tendency to mimic whomever they observe. Observation of specific social behaviors around them increases the likelihood of children behaving exactly that way. You can see that with like a kid mimicking a word that their parents said, or doing a certain act. Specifically, a child observing violent behavior, they are prone to mimic it. One of the long-term effects is desensitization, and we see this a lot. Long-term socialization effects of the mass media are also quite likely increased by the way the mass media and video games affect emotions. Repeated exposures to emotionally activating media or video games can lead to habituation of certain natural emotional reactions. This process is called the desensitization. Negative emotions experienced automatically by the viewers in response to a particular violent or gory scene decline in intensity after many exposures. In conclusion, there's evidence that compelling points to the conclusion that media violence increases the risk significantly that a viewer or game player will behave more violently in the short run and in the long run. Randomized experiments demonstrate conclusively that exposure to media violence immediately increases the likelihood of aggressive behavior for children and adults in the short run. The most important underlying process for this effect is probably priming through mimicry, and increased arousal also play important roles. Ultimately, violence in the media increases the likelihood of people exhibiting more aggressive behavior. I got a good chunk of what I have in this presentation from these two links. The National Library of Medicine has significantly more studies that go into depth, and I recommend looking that up.